reports that we were trying to create was not working out quite well. So let's create a custom report of our own. All right, so I'm able to log in. So let's create a custom report. Say ZT for or terminated employees. So we're going to take the data source of all terminated employees. Yeah, so we can enable it even at a later time.
Oh, okay.
Any
Fair enough.
advanced report can be converted into a web service. EMPLOIE employee. Let's see which supervisory organization they were part of. All right. So trying to create a snapshot of an employee termination cycle. So like an iteration report, where we're getting the employee data, their termination date, their supervisory organization, their management level, the cost center, the location, and say time and position, how much time did they spend on that position. Now say if I would like to add filters, say select say fields on report and say location, frequently used in the selection list. And I would like this to be a prompt. So I want this to be selectable at the time of running the report. And see, I want to add another filter. And I want this to be a prompt as well. I can go to prompt, so I can either manually add those prompts, or I can use this option, populate prompt for undefined field. And if I want to enforce one of the prompt values to be as a required values without, if I don't enter that value, the report will not run. So I can mark it as required. And say if I want to say specify default value and say I want it to be regular, fixed term, temporary, and say I want to be able to select these three categories, but I want it fixed and I don't want it to be changed. So I can select do not prompt at runtime. Right, so let's try to run this report now. So because we selected web service, it gave us all the column heading override as well. Let's run this report. So because we created two prompts, one for location and one for employee type, and employee type, we made it hidden. It's not showing up here. And because we mark this as required, so that's why you have a star next to location. Say all. So these are the people we have in the company since inception. The employee name, termination date, supervisory organization, management level, employee type, cost center, location, and time in position. Now, I would like to add start date as well. So let's go here, edit it, move this to the top, bring it down, bring it down. This I need to go up. Hire date. And say location. I want location by country. So I want to bring this over and say supervisory organization and say I want to add workers manager. So now I've added the hire date, termination date, time in position, employee type, workers managers, supervisory organization, management level, cost center, and location. Now say I want to add another type of filter in the report or in, say, let's go to edit. Say I want to use greater than or equal to. Also, I want to add it in the prompt. I can go to prompt, click on this again. Say our prompt was say higher than or equal to. So say I want to say 010120. I will see all the workers who were hired after 2015. So now it gave me all the filtered people that were hired only after 2010. Say 2000. So I can make the filters work to you know specify the report details as to what I'm looking for with the prompts and filters. And basically, filters I can make it them dynamic by adding them to the prompts and make my report more dynamic as needed. Say, for example, if I say remove this location, say I want to specify value, and I want to select all the locations from here so I don't have to select it every time. And say I don't want to see this, but I want to be able to see this now. So here, if I want to add something or remove something, now I can do that. Make sense? So we created an advanced report. We used an alternate data source. We added some fields such as employee hire date, termination date, time and position, employee type, workers manager, support, management level, cost center, location, address, country. Then we added some filters, location, employee type, hire date, and we converted them to prompts. So on the subfilter or filter type, we can control which fields should prompt the user for a value when the report is run. So configuring prompts, we can click on the populate undefined prompt defaults. So it'll auto-populate any of the prompts that may be set up in the report, which we need to populate. So some of the fields in Workday come with default prompt that will automatically be added to your report if you add the field to your report. So in the prompt tab, populate the undefined prompt defaults. So let me also show you those fields that comes pre-populated with prompts. Say in the soup org, let's try to use a soup. Like for example, prompt committees and subordinates, prompt cost center and hierarchies. So let's open another one. Say this comes pre-populated with prompt start date. So maybe I can returns a value and first started field at runtime. So let's move this up here. So let's remove the hire date. Let's move it up here as well. Now let's go to our filter. So I'm going to remove the hire date from here because we have used the field prompt start date. I want to override this with start date. Now, if I go to the prompts and if I remove the hire date that we manually added in through our filter, so in the filter, we don't have hire date anymore, right? If I go to prompts and if I click on this, and this value will automatically be populated. Say start date, determine default value, say so the two fields that we added, they automatically created our prompts for cost center hierarchies and start date. That is not something we created manually through our filters. That came in from the objects or the fields that we're using. And here we'll see the start date has also populated, and it is giving us the entire cost center hierarchy within the organization. And it's the same for everybody, which is not much useful for us because we only want the cost center that the person was working in. But just to give you an idea, some of the fields will come with predefined prompts, and they can be added in your reports as well. Again, similarly, if I need to see the web services for this report, we can go to web service, URLs. So you'll have all your web services URL available here. So where can prompts come from? In addition to defining prompts and filters and subfilters, prompts can come from other places. You can set the default for these prompts on the prompt tab. For example, location data source. The employees by organization data source has these built-in prompts, include managers, include subordinate organization, and organization. Data source filters. The journal lines for company data filter has 9 built-in prompts, including company, year, and period. The expense report total amount in reporting currency field has a built-in prompt for reporting currency. You can create a calculated field using the prompt for value function as well. Prompt set, you can create a prompt set to a group prompt field value. For example, when a report group or a composite report contains multiple reports all prompting on the same field, a prompt set will allow you to enter prompt field value once and then feed the one value to multiple users of the field. So for example, say the employees by organization data, but that's a data source. We can change this employees by organization. Okay, let us see prompts. This data source automatically included 2 prompts, include managers, include subordinate organizations. When I change the data source to employees by organization, earlier we were using employees terminated, all terminated employees. Because our primary business object is employee, we have access to multiple data sources as well. So prompt set. I believe a prompt set is used when you have a report group or a composite report that contains multiple reports all prompting on the same field. So when you're using a composite report, you're using multiple data sources. And for that, you can create a prompt set that all the data sources could have the same, say, start date or employee type or location, and all the reports have that. Then you can use a prompt set to feed to all those reports as a prompt, or all those data sources as a prompt value. I think we've already gone through the demo for location, like prompt for location, sharing reports. By default, custom reports are not shared, as a custom report is visible only to its owner and to the users who have access to manage all custom reports. The Share tab lets you share a custom report with authorized users. You can share a custom report with all users who have access to the report data source. The domain securing the custom report data source determines which security groups can share the custom report with. Sharing note, you can control if report writers can use different sharing options. Report writers must have access to these security domains to use the sharing options, like the domain report definition sharing all authorized users, report definition sharing specific groups, report definition sharing specific users. So when a report is shared with users, they can run the report, but they can't edit the report. Only the report owner can edit their own custom reports. A shared user can view the report definition and copy the report definition if the shared user is also a report writer. So let's go back to our report and see the option to share. So by default, all the custom reports will be selected as do not share report definition. It is only in use by the owner. Now, when I click on share with all authorized users, that means that anybody who has access to executing a report or running a report at the least, and also has access to this data source through its security policy. So let's have a look at that as well. So I have used security for this. And all terminated employees is secured by these 2 functional areas. And the permitted security groups are these people. Only these security groups have access to all terminated employees' data. So when I select share with all authorized users, so everyone who has access to running a report and have access to this data source should be able to run the report. Now, if I want to share it with specific people or specific groups, so say I can here add Steve Morgan as an authorized user individually, or say I want to share it with HR partners. Say HR analyst, auditor. So anybody who's part of HR partner group will have access to this report. Anybody who's part of HR analyst will have access to this report, and anyone who has access to HR auditor will have access to this report. But in addition, we have to keep in mind that the people in these security groups also has access to this data source. Otherwise, they will be able to run the report, but then they will not show any data in the report if they don't have access to the data source. So another option, like we mentioned here in our report, that unless a user is part of the report writer security group, where they can edit other people's report, unless they're part of the report writer group, they can only edit their own custom reports. So currently, this report is owned by Logan McNeil. Say, if Steve is not part of the report writer group, then what he would need to do, or I would need to do in order for Steve to be able to edit the report, I need to transfer the ownership to say Steve Morgan, and I press OK. And say if I go to share now, I can see now the report is owned by Steve Morgan. So the following table shows common report access issues that a user faces when running a shared report. A user can't run a standard report. So that the root cause could be the user do not have access to the domain securing the standard reports. A user can't run a custom report. The report has not been shared with the customer. A user can't see report field data for certain instances. The data is missing for these instances, or the user belongs to a security group that has constrained access to the report field. By constrained access, I mean, like, for example, if the report, like the user is an HR partner on a support level that defines permissions to that supervisory organization and subordinate, and the report data contains fields that are for the superior organization. So because the user is part of a constrained group and has been assigned a constrained access to a support level, the user will not be able to see the superior organization information in the report. So a user can't see a report field at all. The user does not belong to a security group that has access to that report field. User sees a different number of instances than another user. The user belongs to a security group that has constrained access to the data source or to report fields used in the filter. So when running a report, a user gets an error that they don't have access to a report field. So the user does not belong to a security group that has access to a report field used to generate the report, such as an int filter or a subfilter. So whenever you create a report, it is always a good practice when you need to specially share it with other people, start proxy as that user and run the report as that user. And validate that whether that user has access to the report itself, the fields in the report, and the data source have adequate permissions for that user. Otherwise, you would share the report it will go to the user and they would not be able to either run it, or if they run it, they won't be able to see the data in the report, the relevant data that is required to be seen by that user. So for example, I have, for some clients, created specific security groups, such as workplace reporting users. So for the workplace reporting user, I have added the domains to that group or given security to that group, which relates to Workday, such as emergency contacts, uh, phone numbers, dependence information, and so on. So anything that's related to facility or administration management for that particular user, I have given those domain access to that security group, like reporting workplace user. And then anybody who's part of the administration or the facilities management, if they need access to a report, I just add them to that security group and share the report with that security group. So that makes my life easier to manage. Say, anybody that who's part of workplace need access to a report for the related domains that they would need, I can just assign that user that security group and put that security group in the report who I have shared with. Additionally, there would be people in the sales team who are looking at headcount report for sales teams. So anything that's the data related to headcount, such as staffing information, either all data termination dates, organization information such as supervisory organization, cost centers, any custom orgs that they have, their position, their management level, their manager details. So all the related fields that are related to sales, I've added them to the security group for sales reporting user. And anybody who would like to then see a report on sales within the organizations, I can add them to the sales reporting user group, create the report, share that report with sales reporting user group, and then test it as that particular user as start proxy in sandbox, and then they would be able to run that report. So it's just a different practice and example that I'm sharing with you. That's one way of doing it. So below are the basic steps you should take when troubleshooting report access issues. Verify that the user should have access to the report data. Determine which domains secure the report data source, the standard report or report fields, and the permitted security groups. Also determine which security groups that the user belongs to. Add the user to a security group that already has access to the domain, or add the domain security policy to include a security group to which the user belongs to. You will need to work with your security team to view security groups, view security domains, and change the domain security policy. The security team can use these standard Workday reports to troubleshoot report access issues. So standard reports are view security for securable items. So with this, you can see the fields in the report or the data source that you're using, and it'll show you the security policies and permitted security groups for the securable items, such as data source or report field. Or you can also view another report called view security group for users, shows which security group a user belongs to. So an issue comes that a user can't run a standard report. So the root cause could be run the view security for securable item report to identify the security domains and permitted security group for the standard report. The standard report name is securable item. Run the view security groups for users report to identify which security groups the user belong to, and add user to a security group that already has access to the domain, or edit the domain security policy to include a security group that the users belong to. So we've already run these reports in the past, like view security for securable item and view security groups for users. And based on either the fields of the report or uh, the data source could be a combination of the two. And we need to add those to the security group that the user is either part of, or add that user to a group that has access to those domain security areas for fields and data sources. Working with calculated fields are new configurable field definitions that allow you to manipulate, transform, retrieve, and derive values based on existing data. As you will see in the course, you can use calculated fields to perform date calculations and formatting, perform math calculations as well. So you can manipulate text with concatenate, substring, and formatting functions, convert currency fields, derive range bands from numeric or currency fields, determine if a condition is true or not, drill down and look up levels and values in hierarchies and organizations. You can do sum, count, and aggregate information across related instances, look up values in related objects. Calculated fields are resolved at runtime. So when you create a calculated fields for a function or for a task that you would like to perform, when you run the report, those calculated fields will give you the output of the calculated fields that you have created. They are associated with a business object, example, worker. So you can view the security for calculated field using field related actions. Select calculated field, view security groups. Here you can see the underlying security fields and configured security groups. To determine which domains or domain security policy can be configured, use a calculated fields related action to select security, view security. Here you can see the underlying domains and domain security policies that would be needed to run that calculated field. All right, so let's do some activities around calculated fields. View format date. So let's open our report that we created. Say for employee, I want to create a calculated field on the report. Say I call it calculated field, say termination date formatted, and the type of field, say format date. So from the list, I can select format date type of function. Does not mean it's defined for this field. Why is that? Okay, discard. CF term date formatted. Okay, so let's create another report. Say create calculator field, start date or hire date. So I'm going to select the date field. Now it is using the business object of worker, and the type is format date. Now I have to define which field I'm looking for, hire date, and then I can select a format. Say month of the year. say here, CF term date formatted. Say again, format date, termination date, and say I want to select so here you will see two types of date format. Okay, let's compare it with the standard hire date and termination date. Say hire date. This is what the standard field data would look like. So termination date, and I want to add a filter here. Say field on reports, termination date is not blank. So what this will do, if any of the worker information with termination date does not exist, it will filter it out. So here you can see that original hire date is 01/01/2000, but our formatted is just giving us the month and the year. The default value for termination date is 12/27/2011, whereas the formatted date is giving us a year, month, date, and then time as well. Now let's look at the other type of create view format date, create calculated fields, use a calculated field in a report, add the gender field, edit calculated field, view audit trails of calculated fields. So here we created the calculated field within the report, like directly from the report. And it means that this calculated field can only be used within this report. But say if I want to create a calculated field outside the report, which may be used for multiple reports. So I can say create calc field. So the task is create calculated fields. So here the requirement is use a calculated field, add the gender field, CF gender. All right, say convert text to number. Gender. All right, and return 0 on error. So let's use this in our report. Create calculated field, CF gender, and worker gender is female, CF gender. So let's delete this calculated field that we created. Let's create another one. So create calculated field, CF gender, worker, substring text, gender, say I want to have it at a fixed position, starting 1, and fixed length is also 1. So let's copy this and put it in our report. And it's a substring, so that's the one that we created. And let's add the default gender field as well. So here, as you can see, that the default field is female or male, but our calculated field is taking a substring, starting character position as 1, and fixed length is 1. So what it is doing is taking the first letter of the string and creating a substring out of this. For example, if I say edit calculated field and say fixed length or starting character position, I want to say 2, and say the fixed length, I want to say 3. So it'll start from the second character in the field and give me 3 characters in the data. So it should give me EMA in case of female, and for male, ALE. So let's refresh this report. Make sense? So out of this male, you can only see it's using the second character. Position start character is second, and it's giving me a fixed length of 3 characters. Hence, you see the output of ALE and EMA. Now, let's look at the audit trail for the calculated field as well. So if I look at audit trail, though we created just now, but let's say I want to see it from 2020. So here I can see all the details of what was changed, what was added, who added it, and you can see an audit trail for each and every business object within the tenant. So if I start from the bottom, so external field for business object worker, text substring gender, external field, this is depreciated, so it's worker, external field category is uncategorized. And here in attributes, a new value has been added called CF gender. And then text strings for this worker CF gender, added 1, ad hoc alias, text string 1, then there was a fixed position, and then we made the changes from 3 and 2, removed 1, added these. So this audit trail really gives you an insight as to what exactly happened within that calculated field, who changed what and what did happen there. So before jumping on to the next calculated field, I think let's do it in our next session. Any questions, thoughts about calculated fields and prompts and filters in advanced reports?